My ex cheated on me at the altar, and before the church doors closed, the most feared Mafia boss in New Orleans became my groom. Avery Collins had spent 3 years believing patience was love. She paid the bills, protected his reputation, and ignored every warning her heart tried to give her. Then, 12 minutes before the ceremony, she heard her fiancé whisper to her best friend, "Let her wait." Upstairs, 200 guests were smiling beneath stained glass and white roses, waiting for Avery to become someone's obedient wife. Instead, she walked toward the altar carrying a truth sharp enough to destroy 3 lives. What happened next was not simply revenge. It was a lesson about betrayal, self-respect, and the dangerous difference between a man who promises safety and one who tells the truth. Stay until the end. Like the video and comment where you are watching from. 8 hours earlier, Avery Collins still believed the worst thing waiting for her that day was a wedding dress she could barely breathe in. The bridal suite beneath St. Gabriel's Cathedral smelled of roses, hot curling irons, setting spray, and the expensive champagne someone had opened before 9 in the morning. Sunlight pressed through the narrow basement windows in pale strips illuminating dust that floated above the carpet like ash. Avery sat before a mirror framed by round white bulbs. The woman staring back at her looked composed enough to belong to someone else. Her dark brown hair had been twisted into a low knot and pinned so tightly that the skin near her temples ached. Her lips were painted a muted rose. A thin layer of powder softened the shadows beneath her eyes, hiding the fact that she had slept for less than 3 hours. The dress was beautiful. Everyone had told her so. It had a high lace collar, pearl-covered sleeves, and a fitted silk bodice that wrapped around her ribs like a firm hand. The skirt spread across the floor in bright white folds, too clean and too perfect for the old cathedral basement. Grant's mother had chosen it. She had called the design timeless. Avery had thought it looked like something worn by a woman whose portrait would hang above a fireplace after she died. She had not said that aloud. For the last 6 months, Avery had discovered that weddings required silence from the bride. Every opinion became a complication. Every boundary became stress. Every objection could be dismissed with the same patient smile. "It is only 1 day, sweetheart. You want everyone to be happy, don't you?" Avery inhaled carefully. The bodice tightened. Her mother stood behind her, adjusting the edge of the veil. Ellen Collins had already cried twice that morning, though she had denied both occasions. Her eyes were bright, and she kept pressing one finger beneath them as if tears could be corrected before they fell. "You can still breathe, can't you?" Ellen asked. Avery watched her in the mirror. Breathing was not included in the final alterations. Ellen laughed, then covered her mouth. "Do not make me ruin my makeup. You started crying before the makeup artist arrived." "That was private crying. It does not count." Avery smiled. For a moment the room softened. Her mother leaned down and rested her cheek near Avery's temple without touching the carefully arranged hair. "You look beautiful." The words were gentle enough to hurt. Avery lowered her gaze to her hands. Her engagement ring caught the light. The diamond was elegant, expensive, and slightly larger than anything she would have chosen for herself. Grant had proposed at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the French Quarter. There had been candles, a violinist, and a photographer hidden near the bar. When Avery said yes, strangers had applauded. Later, Grant had admitted he had arranged the photographer before asking because he knew what her answer would be. At the time, she had found his confidence romantic. That morning, the memory felt heavier. A knock sounded against the open door. Thomas Collins entered carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing a black tuxedo that made him look deeply suspicious of formal clothing. Avery's father had spent 30 years repairing commercial refrigeration systems across southern Louisiana. He trusted machines because broken machines usually announced themselves honestly. People, in his opinion, were more difficult. He held out one of the cups. "Coffee for the prisoner." Ellen frowned. "She cannot drink that in the dress." Thomas looked at the wide white skirt. Then someone should have designed the dress with emergency access. Avery accepted the cup with both hands. You are my favorite parent. I have been telling your mother that for years. Ellen took the second cup from him. This one is mine. It was. Thomas bent and kissed Avery's forehead, careful not to disturb her makeup. His face changed when he looked at her closely. You all right, kiddo? The question was casual, but his eyes were not. Avery lifted the coffee. I will be, once this reaches my bloodstream. Thomas remained beside her. You were working again last night. Avery paused. Her phone sat on the vanity beneath a folded handkerchief. The screen was dark, but she could still picture the spreadsheet she had closed at 2:40 in the morning. Grant's company account had been short by nearly $18,000. A payment to a staging contractor had been scheduled to clear before noon. If it failed, 3 luxury listings would have been delayed, and Grant would have blamed the bank, the contractor, the market, or anyone else standing within reach. Avery had moved money from an emergency savings account to cover it. She had told herself she would explain after the honeymoon. I only had to finish one thing, she said. Thomas's mouth tightened. It was your wedding night before your wedding day. The payment could not wait. Grant has employees. Grant's employees are good at selling houses. They are less good at noticing when the operating account is about to collapse. Thomas glanced at Ellen. Her mother looked away. Avery recognized the movement. They had discussed this without her, probably more than once. Thomas crouched beside the chair. You used to investigate companies for a living. I still investigate companies. You investigate one company. His. Avery took a careful sip of coffee. It was too hot, but she swallowed anyway. Grant and I are building something together. Thomas looked around the bridal suite. His name is on the company. It was established before we met. His name is on the apartment lease. That made the application easier. His name is on the office. Dad, your money is in all 3. Ellen touched his shoulder. Tom. He exhaled through his nose. Avery stared at the mirror. Before Grant, she had worked as a forensic accountant for a marine insurance firm near the port. She had traced false damage claims, missing cargo, altered invoices, and payments disguised beneath layers of respectable paperwork. She had been good at it. Better than good. Her supervisor once told her she could hear dishonesty in a spreadsheet the way musicians heard a wrong note. Grant had loved that about her. At first, he had called her brilliant. He had brought dinner to her office during late investigations. He had listened while she explained shipping records he barely understood and looked at her as if intelligence were something beautiful. Then his business began to struggle. 1 late payment became 3. A contractor threatened to sue. 2 properties remained unsold. Grant asked Avery to help for 1 weekend. The weekend became a month. The month became a year. When she finally resigned from the insurance firm, Grant had held her in their kitchen and promised she would never regret choosing their future. 3 years later, her name still appeared nowhere on the company documents. Thomas stood. I am not trying to ruin your morning. You have an unusual way of showing it. I just want you to remember you had a life before him. Avery met his eyes in the mirror. I know. Do you miss it? The question settled quietly between them. The honest answer rose immediately. Every day. She missed the port before dawn. She missed the smell of coffee in the records room. She missed finding a hidden pattern and knowing no one else had seen it yet. She missed being paid for her judgment instead of thanked for cleaning up someone else's mistake. She missed introducing herself without Grant's name appearing in the next sentence. Sometimes, she said. Thomas nodded once. He knew the difference between an answer and the truth beneath it. A woman from the floral company entered carrying a box of white gardenias, and the moment broke apart beneath questions about bouquets and ribbon. Thomas stepped back. I will be upstairs. Avery reached for his hand. Dad. He looked down. I am happy. The lie came gently. Thomas squeezed her fingers. I hope you are. He left before she could decide whether the words were a blessing or a warning. The room became busy again. A makeup artist searched for a brush. A cousin Avery barely knew entered, complimented the dress, and left with a champagne glass. Ellen argued with the florist about the shape of the bouquet. Avery checked her phone. No message from Grant. There were, however, 3 emails from his office. The first concerned the missing contractor payment. The second asked whether Avery had updated the payroll file. The third contained a notice that one of Grant's corporate credit cards had exceeded its limit. Avery opened the attachment. The balance was nearly $47,000. She read the number twice. Several charges came from restaurants, hotels, and private car services. One transaction had been made at a jewelry store in the French Quarter. Grant had not mentioned buying jewelry. Her thumb hovered above his name. She called. The phone rang once. Then the call was declined. Avery stared at the screen. She tried again. This time it went directly to voicemail. Busy morning, Ellen asked. Avery locked the phone. Something at the office. Her mother's expression tightened. Today, problems do not check calendars. Grant should handle it. He's probably getting dressed. So are you. Avery opened the credit card statement again. One hotel charge had been made 2 weeks earlier on a Thursday afternoon. Grant had told her he was showing a property in Baton Rouge that day. She pressed the transaction. The hotel was less than 2 miles from their apartment. Before she could examine it further, perfume entered the room before the woman wearing it. Lila Hart swept through the doorway in a champagne-colored dress that moved around her legs like poured silk. She was tall, blonde, and naturally graceful in a way Avery had spent years pretending not to envy. Her makeup looked effortless, though Avery knew Lila had probably spent an hour creating the effect. There she is, Lila said. She pressed both hands to her chest. My God, Avery, you look like something out of a movie. Avery set down the phone. What kind of movie? The expensive kind where no one has real jobs. Thomas would have liked that answer. Lila crossed the room and embraced her carefully. The vanilla perfume was familiar. Beneath it was another scent, cedar bergamot and smoke. Grant's cologne. Avery's body registered it before her mind allowed the thought to form. She pulled back. Lila smiled too brightly. What nothing? Avery looked at her earrings. A single pearl hung from Lila's left ear. Her right ear was bare. You lost an earring. Lila's hand rose immediately. Oh. She touched the empty lobe. It must be in my bag. You came in without a bag. Lila glanced toward the doorway. Then I left it upstairs. Where have you been? The question sounded simple. Lila's eyes flickered. Checking the reception. The reception is 3 blocks away. I checked thoroughly. Avery waited. Lila gave a light laugh and reached for the champagne bottle. Please do not interrogate me before noon. I have not eaten enough for honesty. Ellen turned from the florist. Lila, can you tell them the gardenias are supposed to sit lower than the roses? Lila stepped toward her immediately. Of course. Avery watched her go. The cedar scent remained in the air. She looked back at Grant's credit card statement. The jewelry store transaction was dated 3 days earlier. Lila had mentioned receiving a surprise gift earlier that week. She had not said from whom. Avery closed the document. The thought was ridiculous. Lila had been her best friend since their first year at Tulane. They had shared apartments, clothes, family holidays, and the kind of secrets that could ruin weaker friendships. When Lila's father died, Avery had slept beside her for 4 nights because Lila woke up screaming. When Avery's first serious boyfriend left, Lila had arrived with wine takeout and a printed photograph of his face taped to a dartboard. Lila was impulsive, selfish sometimes, dramatic often. She was not cruel. Grant was many things. Ambitious, distracted, proud, careless with money. He was not the kind of man who would sleep with her best friend. Avery repeated that silently. Not the kind of man. The sentence did not feel as solid as it should have. Across the cathedral, Grant Whitmore stood in the groom's room with a bourbon bottle tilted above a paper coffee cup. His brother Mason watched from the doorway. "You should slow down." Grant swallowed and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "I am getting married, not operating machinery. You look like you are about to be arrested." Grant checked his phone. 4 missed calls from a number saved only as D. 1 voicemail. He did not play it. Mason closed the door. "Did you fix the account problem? I am fixing it." "That is not what I asked." Grant set the bottle on a folding table beneath a wooden crucifix. The room smelled of dust aftershave and the fried breakfast sandwiches his groomsmen had abandoned an hour earlier. "The money will be replaced." "With what?" Grant turned toward him. "After today, Avery and I combine everything." Mason's face changed. "She does not know. She knows we are getting married." "That is not the same thing." Grant's jaw tightened. "Avery understands financial structures. She understands them better than you. That is why this is stupid. It is temporary. $3.4 million is not temporary." Grant crossed the room and lowered his voice. "No one is losing anything. The development closes next month. I move the profit back into the port account, the invoices balance, and everyone walks away happy." "What development?" "The riverfront project. The project without permits. They are coming. The investors pulled out. I found another source." Mason stared at him. "Who?" Grant said nothing. Mason's eyes moved to the locked black case near the wall. "What is in there?" "Work. You sell houses. Then stop asking questions you cannot afford the answers to." A knock sounded. Grant stiffened. Lila entered and quickly closed the door behind her. She was breathing too fast. "You declined her call," she said. Grant looked at his phone. "I am occupied. She is looking at the company card." Mason's gaze moved between them. Lila noticed him. Her face went pale. Grant spoke without looking away from her. Mason was leaving. Mason remained still. Then he shook his head. "You deserve whatever happens." He walked out. Lila waited until the door shut. "You told me the accounts were clean." "They will be." "You said that last week." "And I was right last week." "No, you were confident last week." "Those are different things." Grant approached her. She stepped back. "You should return to Avery." "I should tell her." His expression hardened. "Tell her what?" "The truth." "Which truth, Lila?" She looked toward the locked case. Grant moved between her and it. "You do not know what is inside that case. I saw the files on your laptop. You saw numbers. I saw port access schedules and container codes." Grant took her arm. "You saw nothing." Lila pulled free. "You said this was about money." "It is." "Then why are people following me?" Grant's face lost color for half a second. It returned quickly. "No one is following you. A black sedan was outside my apartment last night. This is New Orleans. Half the city drives black sedans. It followed me here." Grant glanced toward the narrow window. Lila saw the fear he failed to hide. "You know who they are." He reached for her again, gentler this time. "Listen to me. We get through today. Avery signs the documents after the honeymoon. The company stays open. The money goes back. Then we leave." "We?" Grant smiled. It was the smile he used when he wanted someone to believe the next lie more than the previous one. "You know I never wanted this wedding." Lila's eyes filled. "Then stop it." "I cannot." "Why?" "Because Avery is the only person who can make the records look legitimate." The sentence struck harder than Lila expected. She stared at him. "You are marrying her for her credentials. I am marrying her because she is reliable. That is not love." Grant's expression became impatient. "Love is a luxury for people whose accounts balance." At the port of New Orleans, Roman DeLuca stood before a wall of glass and watched cranes lift steel containers from a cargo ship. The river beyond them was the color of dark coffee beneath the morning clouds. Inside the operations room, monitors displayed shipping routes, inspection schedules, and security feeds from 6 terminals. Gabriel Cruz placed a folder on the conference table. $3.4 million, he said. Roman did not turn from the window. Confirmed, confirmed. Where did it go? Vendor invoices, consulting fees. A shell company registered in Lafayette. From there, Whitmore moved the money into real estate deposits, personal accounts, and 2 offshore transfers. Roman adjusted one cuff. He lacks the intelligence for offshore transfers. I agree. That made Roman turn. Gabriel opened the folder. Photographs showed Grant leaving office buildings, restaurants, and a waterfront apartment. Another image showed him entering a private club owned by Vincent DeLuca's charitable foundation. Roman studied it. When 6 weeks ago? Why did I receive this today? Because the club appears under a trust. The trust appears under a hospital foundation. The foundation is controlled through 3 attorneys. Vincent. Nothing connects him directly. Nothing ever does. Gabriel placed a tablet beside the folder. There is another problem. Roman looked at the screen. A shipping manifest appeared. Several sections had been highlighted. One encrypted port ledger was copied from the security server the same night Whitmore accessed the vendor account, Gabriel said. It contains inspection patterns, restricted container routes, and the names of 6 officials on our payroll. Who copied it? Whitmore's credentials opened the system. A second device completed the transfer. Location, his office. Identity unknown. Roman looked through the glass again. Below, trucks moved between stacks of containers with mechanical precision. Money could be replaced. Information could not. His phone vibrated. The name Salvatore appeared. Roman answered. His grandfather did not bother with a greeting. The vote is tomorrow at midnight. Roman's gaze sharpened. It was scheduled for next month. My surgeon disagrees. Roman became still. What did he say? That I have 48 hours before he cuts open my chest and decides whether I deserve another year. Gabriel looked away. Roman's voice remained controlled. Then postpone the vote. No. You cannot transfer authority while recovering. That is why I will do it before. Roman walked toward the conference table. The documents are prepared. The documents are prepared for a man with roots. I control the ports, the security division, and every legitimate company Vincent nearly destroyed. You control men. You do not lead a life. Roman's jaw tightened. This argument is outdated. So is blood. It still stains. Say what you want. Salvatore sighed. You have soldiers, businesses, enemies. What you do not have is anything you would hesitate to lose. Hesitation gets men killed. So does having nothing human left inside you. The call ended. Roman looked at the silent phone. Gabriel waited. Do we postpone the Whitmore collection? He asked. Roman slipped the phone into his coat. No. Salvatore expects you at the estate. He will see me tomorrow. With a wife, Roman looked at Grant's photograph, then at the cathedral invitation Gabriel had placed beneath it. Avery Collins and Grant Whitmore. St. Gabriel's Cathedral. 3 o'clock. Prepare the car, Roman said. Back in the bridal suite, the room had grown warmer. Avery's coffee was cold. Her feet already hurt, though she had not yet walked farther than the mirror. Lila stood near the window typing quickly on her phone. Avery watched her reflection. Who are you talking to? Lila locked the screen. My mother. Your mother is sitting upstairs. She texted me. What did she want? Lila looked at her. Why are you asking? Avery turned in the chair, the dress pulled tightly across her ribs. Because you smell like Grant. The room seemed to become quieter, though no one else had stopped moving. Lila's face remained still. Then she laughed. I hugged half the groomsmen this morning. Grant wears a cologne no one else can afford. Avery, and you are missing an earring. Lila touched her ear again. The gesture was automatic. Avery stood. The skirt settled around her in heavy folds. Tell me I am being ridiculous. You are stressed. That is not what I asked. Lila lowered her voice. You are getting married in less than an hour. Please do not invent something ugly because you are scared. The words landed wrong, not because they were cruel, because they sounded practiced. Avery thought of every time Grant had called her suspicious when she asked about money, every time he had said she was tired when she noticed a contradiction, every time a reasonable question had been turned into evidence that something was wrong with her. Where is he? Avery asked. With the groomsmen. Which room I do not know. You were just with them. I said I hugged them. I did not say I stayed. Avery reached for her phone. Lila stepped closer. What are you doing? Calling him. He will not answer. The certainty in Lila's voice silenced them both. Avery looked up. Lila swallowed. I mean, he is getting ready. Avery called. Straight to voicemail. She placed the phone on the vanity. I am going to find him. Lila moved in front of the door. The fear on her face was no longer subtle. Avery, please, move. Let today be perfect. Avery looked at the single pearl hanging from Lila's ear. Perfect for which one of us Lila's mouth opened. Nothing came out. A wedding coordinator appeared behind her. 30 minutes, the woman announced. We need everyone upstairs in 10. Avery gathered the front of her skirt. The silk weighed more than it had an hour earlier. She stepped around Lila and entered the basement corridor. Behind her, Ellen called her name. Avery said she needed air. No one questioned why she was walking deeper into the building instead of toward the stairs. The corridor beneath the cathedral was narrow and cool. Fluorescent lights buzzed above beige walls lined with framed photographs of church picnics and children's choirs. Avery passed stacked reception programs. Her name appeared beside Grant's in black script. Avery Collins and Grant Whitmore. The letters looked permanent. She continued. From above came the muted sound of the organist practicing the processional. Each note traveled through the old stone walls and settled in her chest. The groom's room stood open. 2 men in tuxedos were inside, but Grant was not. Avery asked where he had gone. One of them pointed toward the choir corridor. He said he needed privacy. Avery followed the hall. The music above stopped. For several seconds she heard only the movement of her dress and the soft strike of her heels against the floor. Then came a woman's breath. Avery stopped. The choir storage room door stood open less than an inch. A pearl earring lay near the threshold. Inside, Lila whispered, She's going to come looking for you. Grant laughed softly. Let her wait. She's good at that. The words did not break Avery's heart. They clarified it. For 3 years, she had believed love required patience. She had waited through late dinners, missing payments, unanswered calls, and apologies that somehow left her feeling guilty for needing them. She had waited for Grant's business to stabilize, for his promises to become plans, and for the man she met to return from wherever ambition had taken him. Now she understood. He had not failed to notice her waiting. He had counted on it. Avery stood outside the choir storage room with one hand wrapped around the silk of her dress. Through the narrow opening, she could see Grant's palm against the wall. His silver watch caught the weak fluorescent light. She had given him that watch on his birthday. It had cost more than she could afford at the time, but Grant had stared at it through the jewelry store window for 20 minutes. Avery had gone back the next day and bought it with money she had been saving for a professional certification course. Lila's bare shoulder moved beneath his hand. Avery could not see her face. She did not need to. The pearl earring on the floor was enough. Lila whispered, "You need to go." Grant gave a quiet laugh. "She will still be upstairs. You don't know that." "I know Avery." The certainty in his voice was worse than the affair. He believed he knew exactly how much humiliation she would tolerate. Avery stepped backward. Her heel touched the floor without a sound. She did not open the door. She did not scream. She did not demand explanations from people who had already explained themselves through their choices. She turned and walked away. The corridor seemed longer than before. The organ began again above her, its music moving through the cathedral walls in deep, trembling waves. Avery passed the groom's room, the stacked programs, and a silver cart covered with champagne glasses. A woman carrying flowers smiled at her. "Almost time." Avery smiled back. "Yes." Her voice sounded calm. That frightened her more than tears would have. When she reached the bridal suite, Ellen was speaking with the photographer. The florist had arranged the bouquets along the vanity. 3 bridesmaids stood near the mirror laughing over something on a phone. Lila was not there. Of course she was not. Avery entered and closed the door. Her mother looked up. "There you are. We were beginning to worry. I need 1 minute." Ellen studied her face. "Avery, 1 minute, Mom." Something in her tone silenced the room. The photographer lowered his camera. The bridesmaids exchanged uncertain glances. Ellen nodded. "All right. Everyone outside." No one argued. The room slowly emptied until Avery was alone. She locked the door. The click sounded final. For several seconds she stood with her back against the wood. Then her knees weakened. She crossed to the vanity and gripped its edge. The woman in the mirror still looked like a bride. Her hair was perfect. Her veil fell in soft white layers. The diamond on her finger still reflected the lights. Nothing visible had changed. That was the cruelty of betrayal. The world did not rearrange itself to match the damage. A tear slipped beneath Avery's right eye. It cut through her makeup and reached the corner of her mouth. She wiped it away. Another followed. Avery closed her eyes. She allowed herself 60 seconds. She cried for the years she had given Grant. She cried for the career she left, the money she covered, and every question she swallowed to preserve peace. She cried for the apartment she had decorated, but did not legally own. She cried for the friendship Lila had carried into that storage room and abandoned on the floor beside her earring. Most of all, she cried for the woman she had been that morning. That woman had still believed effort could transform dishonesty into love. Avery opened her eyes. The clock beside the mirror showed 2:37. The ceremony began at 3. She took a tissue and removed the ruined makeup beneath her eye. The skin turned red from the pressure. She reached for concealer, then stopped. Let them see one mark. Let the photographs show that something happened before she walked toward the altar. A knock sounded. Avery Ellen's voice came through the door. "Are you all right?" Avery stared at herself. "No." Silence followed. Her mother tried the handle. "Open the door." Avery looked at the engagement ring. For one moment she wanted to tell Ellen everything. Her mother would call Thomas. Thomas would find Grant. The wedding would end in the basement, hidden from the guests. Everyone would go home with rumors instead of truth. Grant would control the story. He would say Avery panicked. He would say the pressure became too much. He would call the affair a misunderstanding and explain that Lila had been upset. Lila would cry. Grant's mother would ask Avery to consider the families. The guests would leave, believing there were 2 sides. Avery unlocked the door. Ellen entered immediately. Her eyes moved to Avery's cheek. What happened? Avery reached for the veil. "I need you to help me fix this." Ellen closed the door behind her. "Avery, look at me." Avery turned. Her mother's expression softened with fear. "Did Grant do something?" The truth pressed against Avery's throat. "Yes." Ellen's face changed. What Avery could not say it yet. Not because she wanted to protect Grant, because once the words belonged to someone else, the moment would begin moving without her. "I need to handle it. You do not have to handle everything alone." I know. It was another lie. Avery had handled almost everything alone for years. Ellen touched her arm. "Do you want to leave?" There it was, the simple door. Avery could remove the dress sleeve through the side entrance and go home with her parents. It would be reasonable. It would be safe. It would also allow Grant to remain the charming man whose wedding had mysteriously collapsed. Avery looked at the white veil in her hands. No. Ellen's fingers tightened. "You still want to marry him?" Avery met her eyes. "I want to walk down that aisle." Her mother searched her face. Those were not the same answer. Ellen understood that. She did not press further. Instead, she adjusted the veil with trembling hands. Avery watched her mother work. "Mom." "Yes, I love you." Ellen stopped. "I love you too." Avery nodded. "Whatever happens upstairs, remember that." Ellen's eyes filled. "Avery, you are frightening me." "I know." The door opened before either of them could say more. Lila stood in the hallway. Her lipstick had been repaired. Both earrings were gone now. Smart. She looked from Avery to Ellen. "The coordinator needs us." Avery studied her. Lila's breathing changed. "Are you okay?" Lila asked. Avery smiled. "I'm ready." Lila's face lost a fraction of color. Ellen remained beside Avery until they reached the stairs. The bridesmaids formed a line near the sanctuary entrance. Lila took her place at the front. She looked back once. Avery gave her nothing. The organ shifted into the processional. One by one, the bridesmaids disappeared through the doors. Avery stood in the shadowed hall and listened to the guests rise. Thomas waited near the entrance. When he saw her, his expression softened. He held out his arm. "There's my girl." The tenderness nearly broke her. Avery placed her hand on his sleeve. Thomas looked at her cheek. "What happened there?" "Makeup problem." His eyes narrowed. "That is not makeup." The coordinator moved toward them. 30 seconds. Thomas ignored her. "You want to tell me something?" Avery looked through the narrow space between the cathedral doors. Grant stood at the altar. From a distance, he looked perfect. His black tuxedo fit cleanly across his shoulders. His hair was in place. His expression was warm and expectant. Lila stood several feet behind him with her bouquet held against her stomach. Avery felt Thomas watching her. "You do not have to go in," he said quietly. She looked at her father. He had taught her how to change a tire balance, a checkbook, and leave any room where someone treated her as less than she was. Somewhere between meeting Grant and wearing that dress she had forgotten. Avery tightened her grip on Thomas's arm. "I know." The cathedral doors opened. Sunlight from the stained glass moved across the aisle in blue and red bands. White roses climbed the pews. Candles burned beside the altar. 200 guests turned toward her. Avery heard the soft wave of admiration. She took one step, then another. The dress dragged behind her. Thomas's arm remained solid beneath her hand. Grant smiled. Avery watched him perform happiness for the room. She wondered how many times she had mistaken that performance for love. Halfway down the aisle, Grant's gaze shifted toward Lila. It lasted less than a second. Avery saw it. Lila lowered her eyes. Thomas leaned closer. "You are shaking." "I know." Do you want me to stop? Avery looked ahead. No. They reached the altar. Thomas kissed her cheek. I love you, kiddo. Avery closed her eyes for one breath. I love you too. He placed her hand in Grant's. Grant's fingers closed around hers. Warm, familiar, false. You look incredible, he whispered. Avery looked at the edge of his collar. A faint trace of lipstick remained near the seam. You look nervous? She said. His smile tightened. Big day. Yes. Father Brennan opened his book. The congregation sat. Avery remained beside Grant while the priest spoke about commitment, faith, and the sacred responsibility of marriage. Each word fell between them like an accusation. Grant's thumb moved across her knuckles. Avery wanted to pull away. She waited. Not because Grant expected her to, because this time waiting belonged to her. Father Brennan read from Scripture. Love is patient. Avery looked at Lila. Love is kind. Lila's eyes filled with tears. It does not dishonor others. Grant's fingers tightened around Avery's hand. It is not self-seeking. Avery almost laughed. Father Brennan lifted his gaze. And if anyone present knows of any lawful reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, let that person speak now. The cathedral became silent. Avery removed her hand from Grant's. His head turned. Avery. She stepped toward the microphone. Father Brennan blinked. Miss Collins? Avery wrapped her fingers around the stand. I know a reason. A single note sounded from the organ before the musician stopped. Grant leaned toward her. What are you doing? Avery turned toward the guests. Her parents sat in the first pew. Ellen's hands were pressed together. Thomas was already rising. Grant's mother stared at Avery with open confusion. Lila had gone completely still. Avery brought the microphone closer. My fiancé was inside the choir storage room with my best friend 12 minutes before I walked down this aisle. The cathedral inhaled. Then the whispers began. Grant grabbed Avery's wrist beneath the fall of her veil. What the hell are you doing? He whispered. Avery looked down at his hand. For the first time in 3 years, I'm not protecting you. Grant released a strained laugh. She misunderstood something. He faced the guests. Avery has been under enormous pressure. She has barely slept. Avery raised the microphone again. I saw your watch against the wall. I saw Lila's pearl earring on the floor. I can still smell her perfume on your shirt. Lila covered her mouth. Grant's grip tightened. You need to stop. Avery looked directly at him. Lila told you I might come looking for you. His face changed. You told her to let me wait. The whispering died. Avery repeated his words. Let her wait. She's good at that. Grant stared at her. For the first time, there was no charm in his face, only anger. Lila began crying. Avery, please. Avery turned toward her. Please, what Lila opened her mouth. No answer came. Please let you explain, Avery asked. Please protect your reputation. Please pretend my best friend did not walk into a storage room with the man I was about to marry. I never meant to hurt you. Avery's laugh was quiet. You knew where I was standing. Lila's shoulders shook. Grant stepped closer to Avery. You are humiliating yourself. Avery felt something cold settle inside her. No, Grant. I'm embarrassing the version of you I spent 3 years pretending was real. His hand closed around her wrist again. Pain shot beneath her skin. You are destroying everything. I think you handled that before I arrived. Grant lowered his voice. You have no idea what you are doing. The cathedral doors slammed open. The sound struck through the room like thunder. Rain swept across the entrance. 4 men in dark suits walked inside. They moved slowly, their eyes traveling over the guests, the windows, and every exit. At the center of them was Roman DeLuca. His black coat was wet across the shoulders. His dark hair had been touched by rain. He wore no tie, and nothing in his expression suggested he had arrived by accident. The whispering stopped. Grant released Avery. The change in him was immediate. His anger vanished. Fear took its place. Roman walked down the aisle. He did not look at the guests. He looked only at Grant. Grant Whitmore. Grant stepped away from the altar. Roman. Roman stopped several feet from him. "This is not a good time," Grant said. Roman looked at the flowers, the candles, and the crowded cathedral. "You spent $3.4 million of my money on a wedding. I would say the timing is excellent." A sound moved through the pews. Grant's mother stood. "What is he talking about?" Grant ignored her. "Roman, I can explain. You moved money through false vendor accounts. You sent it through a company in Lafayette, then divided it among real estate deposits, personal expenses, and offshore transfers." Roman's voice remained calm. That calm made every word more dangerous. "You leased an apartment on Dauphine Street. You purchased a car you could not afford. You paid hotel bills, restaurant accounts, and $47,000 on a corporate card." Avery stared at Grant. The hotel charge, the secret apartment, the numbers she had spent months trying to repair. Roman continued. "You also copied an encrypted port ledger containing restricted inspection schedules." Grant's face lost all color. "I did not copy anything." Roman tilted his head. "That was the first useful thing you said." Grant looked toward the side entrance. One of Roman's men moved into it. The path closed. Avery felt the entire shape of her relationship change. Grant had not merely failed at business. He had used her to conceal criminal activity. The spreadsheets, the unexplained transfers, the missing invoices. He had placed them in front of her because he expected her to clean them without asking where the dirt came from. Grant dropped to his knees. The movement shocked the guests more than Roman's accusation. "Please," Grant said. "I can fix this." Roman looked down at him. "You had months to fix it. The riverfront development closes next month. There is no riverfront development." Grant's mouth opened. Roman continued. "The permits were rejected. Your investors withdrew. The property is tied to 3 fraudulent loans." Avery looked at Grant. "You told me the permits were delayed." He did not look at her. "You told me the investors were committed." "Avery, not now." She stared at him. He was on his knees before a criminal exposed in front of everyone they knew, and he still expected her silence. Roman's gaze moved to Avery's wrist. Red marks had formed beneath Grant's fingers. Roman looked at Grant. "You touched her." Grant swallowed. "She is my fiancé." Roman's face became still. That was not an answer. One of Roman's men took a step forward. Avery raised her hand. "I don't need him punished for touching me." Roman looked at her. "I need him unable to use my name, my credit, or my work ever again." For the first time, Roman's attention settled fully on her. His eyes were dark, controlled, and far too observant. "You handled his accounts. I repaired them. Did you know where the money came from?" "No." Grant looked up. She did not know anything. Avery turned toward him. "Stop using my ignorance as evidence of your kindness." Roman studied her for another second. Then he looked at Grant. "She built your company." Grant said nothing. Roman returned his attention to Avery. "I have a problem." She glanced around the cathedral. "You have chosen an unusual place to discuss it. I had planned to collect a debt. And now I see a more efficient arrangement." Grant struggled to stand. "No." Roman did not look at him. My family is voting tomorrow night on control of several port companies. My grandfather will not transfer authority to an unmarried heir. Avery stared at him. You need a wife. I need one before the vote. The silence in the cathedral changed. The guests leaned into it. Roman stepped closer. You needed a husband when you entered this church. Avery's voice sharpened. I needed the man I trusted, not to sleep with my best friend. I cannot give you that man. Roman extended his hand. I can give you a contract. Grant moved toward them. This is insane. Roman looked at him. Remain where you are. Grant stopped. Roman faced Avery again. 1 year. Separate property. Separate rooms. No physical contact without your permission. I remove every debt Grant attached to your name. I restore the money he took from you. You attend family functions and public events when required. And you inherit control. I secure it. Avery looked at his open hand. You expect me to marry a mafia boss because my fiancé cheated on me? Roman's expression did not change. No, I expect you to decide whether honest danger is worse than the safe lie you were about to marry. Thomas stepped into the aisle. Avery, come here. She turned. Her father's face was pale with fury. Ellen stood beside him, crying silently. Avery looked back at Roman. If I say no, I remove Grant from your accounts and place security outside your parents' home until the investigation is complete. You would still help me. I came to collect from him. Protecting the innocent parties is practical. That almost sounded decent. Do not confuse practical with decent. Avery believed him. That mattered. Father Brennan stepped forward. This ceremony cannot simply continue with another groom. Roman turned toward him. I did not ask you to ignore the law. A woman in a gray suit rose from the third pew. She carried a leather case. Naomi Price, she said. Counsel for Mr. DeLuca. Father Brennan looked exhausted. You brought an attorney to a wedding. Roman glanced at Grant. I brought an attorney to a collection. Naomi approached the altar. Louisiana requires specific documentation. There are procedures for an emergency waiver, but Miss Collins must speak with independent counsel and confirm consent without Mr. DeLuca present. Avery looked at Roman. You prepared for this? No. Naomi opened the case. I prepare for him. Thomas reached Avery. We are leaving. Avery did not move. Grant spoke from behind them. Avery, listen to your father. She turned. The desperation in Grant's eyes was not love. It was calculation. He still needed her. That knowledge freed something inside her. Avery faced Naomi. I want to hear the terms. The cathedral emptied slowly. Guests were directed toward the reception hall while Naomi contacted a judge. Roman's men remained near the entrances. Grant was placed in a side pew beneath Gabriel's watch. Lila sat alone in the back row. Avery entered a small chapel with her parents. Thomas closed the door. No. Avery removed her veil. Dad. No. You do not marry a criminal because another criminal cheated on you. I know how it sounds. It sounds like shock. Ellen touched Avery's bruised wrist. Is this revenge? Avery looked down. Part of it. Thomas turned away. That is not enough. No. Avery placed the veil on a chair. But leaving Grant is not revenge. Separating my name from his crimes is not revenge. Protecting you from whatever he brought into our lives is not revenge. We can go to the police. Roman said Grant stole an encrypted port ledger. Do you think ordinary police protection begins fast enough for people who steal from families like his? Thomas stared at her. You are afraid. Yes. Then come home. Avery looked at her father. Home is an apartment Grant can enter. Home is a company account tied to stolen money. Home is every place I allowed him to control, because I thought trust meant never preparing for betrayal. Ellen's eyes filled again. Does Roman frighten you? Yes. Then why him? Avery thought of Roman offering protection, even if she refused, because he frightens me without pretending to love me. Thomas closed his eyes. That is the saddest thing I have ever heard you say. It is also the most honest. A knock sounded. Naomi entered alone with a folder. She explained every clause. Avery asked questions for nearly 20 minutes. She changed 4 terms. No physical contact without explicit consent. No concealed information that could place her family in danger. The right to maintain independent employment and accounts. The complete exposure of every debt Grant had tied to her identity. Naomi wrote each revision. When she finished, Roman entered. Avery placed the contract before him. One more condition. Roman waited. Grant loses the company I built for him. Roman glanced through the chapel door toward the side pew. That was already going to happen. He signed. Father Brennan returned after the emergency waiver was approved. His expression suggested he would be discussing the day in confession for years. The ceremony resumed with fewer guests. Some people had gone home. Others remained because curiosity outweighed discomfort. Grant sat under guard. Lila stayed near the rear of the cathedral. Thomas and Ellen took their places in the first pew, though Thomas's jaw remained tight. Roman stood at the altar. Avery waited alone at the end of the aisle. No one offered an arm. No one gave her away. She walked forward by herself. When she reached Roman, he did not reach for her. Avery offered her hand. He accepted it. Father Brennan began again. His voice shook at first, then steadied. When he asked Roman whether he accepted Avery Collins as his wife, Roman looked only at her. I do. The priest turned. And do you, Evelyn Collins, accept Roman DeLuca as your husband? Roman spoke quietly. She prefers Avery. Her throat tightened. It was such a small thing. Grant had called her sweetheart whenever he wanted her to stop asking questions. Roman used the name she had chosen. Father Brennan corrected himself. Avery Collins, do you accept Roman DeLuca as your husband? Avery looked at Roman. There was no promise in his face, no false tenderness, only the terms they had both signed and the space he had given her to refuse. I do. Father Brennan asked for the rings. Roman removed a plain platinum band from his pocket. It belonged to my mother, he said. Avery looked at him. You brought that to collect a debt. I carry it when family decisions are being made. He held the ring between his fingers. May I? Avery extended her left hand. Roman slid the band onto her finger. It was simple cool and heavier than Grant's diamond. Father Brennan pronounced them husband and wife. The words moved through the cathedral. When he told Roman he could kiss the bride. Roman stepped closer. He waited. Avery gave the smallest nod. His lips touched her temple. The contact was brief and warm. Breathe, Mrs. DeLuca, he whispered. The difficult part begins after the applause. There was no applause. Roman turned toward the guests. The reception is canceled. No one argued. He offered Avery his hand. She took it. They descended the altar steps together. Grant rose from the pew. Avery, she kept walking. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Avery stopped. She did not turn around. No Grant. Her fingers tightened around Roman's hand. I almost made it. Then she walked toward the cathedral doors as rain washed the city clean beyond them. Rain struck the cathedral steps hard enough to blur the city beyond them. Avery walked beside Roman beneath the stone archway, one hand holding the front of her dress above the wet pavement. The platinum band on her finger felt colder with every step. Behind her, the cathedral doors opened again. Avery. Her father's voice cut through the rain. She stopped. Roman stopped with her. He did not keep a hand on her back. He did not tell her to continue toward the black vehicle waiting at the curb. He simply moved half a step away, leaving an open space between them. Thomas stood beneath the cathedral entrance with Ellen beside him. Rain blew across the steps and darkened the shoulders of his tuxedo. Ellen held her dress above her ankles, tears moving freely down her face. "Come here," Thomas said. "We need to talk before you get into that car." Avery looked at Roman. His face revealed nothing. "Take whatever time you need," he said. Thomas heard him. "I was speaking to my daughter." Roman's gaze remained steady. So was I. Avery crossed the wet steps toward her parents. Ellen reached her first and took both of her hands. "You do not have to leave with him. I know. You can come home with us." Grant knew where they lived. He knew which window Thomas forgot to lock when he worked in the garage. He knew Ellen attended church on Wednesday evenings and that Avery's childhood bedroom still faced the narrow alley beside the house. Home no longer felt like a place outside the danger. It felt like a location Grant could provide. Thomas looked over Avery's shoulder at Roman. "You met that man less than an hour ago." "Yes." "You married him." "Yes." "That is not a normal decision. Nothing about today was normal." "Then do not make a permanent choice inside a temporary disaster." Avery looked down at the platinum ring. "The agreement lasts 1 year." Thomas stared at her. "You signed an agreement, I read it. I changed it. I signed it. Avery, listen to yourself. I am listening." Her father's anger faltered. Avery had spent years lowering her voice whenever someone else raised theirs. Now she spoke quietly because she did not need volume to hold her ground. Thomas stepped closer. "Choosing something does not make it safe." "No," she said. "But it makes it mine." Ellen squeezed her hands. "Are you trying to punish Grant?" Avery thought of him on his knees beneath the altar, still expecting her to save him. "I am trying to stop carrying the consequences of his choices." "And?" Roman Ellen asked. Avery looked back. Roman stood beside the open rear door of the vehicle while rain struck his black coat. His men had spread across the sidewalk, watching windows traffic and the cathedral entrance. He looked like the center of a world where danger never needed an invitation. "I do not know what Roman is yet." Thomas's jaw tightened. "We know what men like him are." Avery faced her father again. "No, we know what people say they are. Today taught me those are not always the same thing." Thomas looked wounded by that. Avery touched his arm. "I am not asking you to trust him. I am asking you to trust that I finally made a decision for myself." Ellen pulled Avery into an embrace. The lace collar pressed against Avery's throat. Her mother smelled of rain powder and the lavender hand cream she had used since Avery was a child. "Call me Ellen," whispered. "I will. Tonight. I promise." Thomas did not embrace her until she turned to leave. Then his hand closed around her shoulder. Avery looked back. "If he hurts you," Thomas said, "there is nowhere he can hide from me." Avery nearly smiled. Roman had men with weapons, armored vehicles, and access to half the port. Thomas had an old pickup truck and a toolbox. At that moment, Avery believed her father completely. "I know." She returned to the curb. Roman waited until she entered the vehicle before following. The door closed with a heavy sound. Rain became a muted rhythm against reinforced glass. The cathedral disappeared behind a curtain of water as the vehicle pulled away. Avery sat with the dress gathered around her. White silk covered most of the seat and spilled against Roman's leg. "Your father dislikes me," Roman said. "He is showing remarkable restraint. I noticed." Avery reached into her hair and found the first pin. She pulled it free. Then another. Each pin fell into the cup holder between them with a small metallic click. Roman watched the city through the window. "You plan to wear your hair like that all night? I plan to be someone else all night." The answer left her before she could soften it. Roman turned toward her. Avery removed another pin. The pressure around her temples began to ease. Outside, the garden district passed in wet shades of green and gray. Oak branches bent above the road. Water rushed along the gutters. Tourists crowded beneath balconies and restaurant awnings, unaware that a wedding had ended and begun again only streets away. Avery removed the final pin. Her hair fell around her shoulders in stiff waves. She exhaled. Roman looked at the pile of metal. Relieved. My scalp is. And the rest of you undecided. Her hands began to shake. Avery folded them beneath the skirt. Roman noticed. Delayed shock. I am not in shock. You found your fiancé with your best friend, exposed him before 200 witnesses discovered he stole from my family and married a stranger before dinner. When you say it like that, it sounds unreasonable. It was unreasonable before I said it. Avery looked at him. There was no mockery in his expression. He opened a compartment beside the seat, removed a bottle of water, and placed it near her hand. He did not touch her. Avery drank. The water was cold enough to hurt her teeth. What happens to Grant? She asked. His accounts are being frozen. Already my people do not require a reception break. What about the company? Every record connected to the stolen money will be secured. Avery tightened her grip on the bottle. That company contains my work. I know. You know because Grant told you I know, because men like Grant do not build anything that survives inspection. Someone did the work. Avery looked away. The recognition should not have mattered. It did. The city thinned as they moved toward Lake Pontchartrain. Historic homes gave way to wider roads, warehouses, and long stretches of wet marsh grass beneath a darkening sky. Roman's estate appeared behind a wall of cypress trees and black iron gates. Cameras followed the vehicle as it approached. The gates opened without sound. The house stood low against the lake, built from dark stone steel and walls of glass. Nothing about it resembled the romantic mansions Avery had expected from an old New Orleans family. It looked designed to survive an attack. The vehicle stopped beneath a covered entrance. A man opened Avery's door. She gathered the dress and stepped onto the stone. Pain shot through both feet. Roman looked down at her shoes. Those were a poor choice. They were chosen for a wedding. Same problem. Avery looked up at him. He walked toward the house. She followed because remaining outside in a wet wedding dress seemed less dignified than following a crime boss into his fortress. The entrance opened into a wide room overlooking the lake. Gray stone floors reflected the evening light. Security cameras were hidden in corners too carefully designed to be decorative. Men in dark clothing stood at distant doorways watching without appearing to stare. A woman in her 60s waited near a long table. Her silver hair was arranged in a low knot. Her black dress was simple and exact. "Mr. DeLuca," she said. "Elena." Her gaze moved to Avery. No shock, no curiosity, only attention. "This is Avery," Roman said. "She will use the primary suite." Elena inclined her head. "Mrs. DeLuca." The title felt different inside the house. At the Cathedral, it had been part of a ceremony. Here it sounded like an identity already entered into the system. Roman removed his cufflinks. "Send a team to collect her belongings from Grant's apartment." Avery turned. "No." The room became still. Roman looked at her. "No. You do not get to empty my home without asking. Grant has access. I can change the locks. He has desperate creditors, criminal partners, and reasons to destroy evidence. That does not mean you make decisions for me." Roman studied her. Avery could feel Elena listening without moving. Roman placed the cufflinks on the table. "You are right." The apology arrived so quickly that Avery almost missed it. He turned to Elena. "Prepare a list of options. Mrs. DeLuca will decide what is removed and when." Elena nodded. Avery stared at Roman. Grant had never apologized without first explaining why she had forced him to make the mistake. Roman offered no defense. The difference unsettled her more than resistance would have. Elena led Avery upstairs. The primary suite faced the lake through a wall of glass. A dark bed stood at the center of the room. There were no photographs, books, or personal objects, except a watch on the bedside table and a closed wooden box near the window. "This is his room," Avery said. "Yes. Where will he sleep?" "His office." Avery looked at Elena. "Why put me here? People in this house observe patterns. If Mr. DeLuca returned with a wife and placed her in a guest room, the arrangement would become public before morning. So I am performing for the staff." "You are performing for anyone who pays the staff." Elena pointed toward a door. "The bathroom is prepared. There is clothing on the counter. The bedroom locks from the inside." Avery glanced at the handle. "Does Roman have a key?" "He has never used one on a locked bedroom door." Elena left. The silence settled immediately. Avery stood in the middle of the room. Her wet skirt clung to her legs. Her hair felt heavy against her neck. The platinum ring reflected the gray light from the lake. She reached for the zipper at the back of the dress. Her fingers could not find it. She tried again. The bodice pressed tighter around her ribs. Avery twisted, pulling at the lace. The zipper did not move. Her breathing shortened. She tried harder. The room blurred. Then the first sob tore out of her. Avery bent forward and gripped the skirt. The crying came without grace. She cried for Grant, but not because she wanted him back. She cried for every year she had called endurance loyalty. She cried for Lila and the empty space where their friendship had been. She cried for her parents standing in the rain, and for the fact that she had entered a stranger's house because it felt safer than returning to her own life. A knock sounded. Avery wiped her face. "Yes." The door remained closed. "Elena said you may need help," Roman said. Avery looked at the zipper. "Come in." Roman opened the door and stopped near the entrance. He had removed his coat. His white shirt was dry beneath it, the sleeves rolled once at the wrists. Avery held the front of the dress against her chest. "I cannot get it off. Do you want? Elena?" Avery shook her head. "Just get me out of this dress." Roman approached slowly. "Turn around." She did. His fingers moved her hair away from the zipper. He did not touch her skin. "Breathe in." Avery inhaled. Roman pulled the zipper down in one clean motion. The bodice released her. Air filled her lungs so quickly that she nearly cried again. "Thank you," she whispered. Roman stepped back. "There is water beside the bed." Elena left clothing in the bathroom. Avery turned, holding the dress closed. "You always give instructions after helping someone." "Yes, at least you are consistent. Consistency is underrated." He walked toward the door. "Roman." He stopped. "Why did you agree to my conditions? You asked for them. Most men would have negotiated. Most men mistake access for authority." Avery looked at him. "And you do not." Roman's eyes moved to the ring on her hand. "I know the difference." He left and closed the door. The next morning, Avery woke beneath cool sheets with no idea where she was. Then the memory returned all at once. The storage room. The altar. Roman's hand. She sat up. The wedding dress was gone. Fresh clothing waited on a chair near the window. Black trousers, a cream blouse, flat shoes. A note rested on top. "Breakfast is downstairs at 7. Avery checked the clock. 6:54. She dressed quickly and followed the smell of coffee through the quiet house. Roman sat at the kitchen island with a laptop open before him. He wore a charcoal suit and a white shirt. A cup of black coffee rested beside his hand. "You are 2 minutes early," he said. Avery poured herself coffee. "I was raised to believe lateness is a character defect." "That sounds exhausting." "My mother has many standards." She sat opposite him. Roman closed the laptop and slid a thick folder across the stone surface. Avery opened it. The marriage certificate was on top. Her name appeared beside his in black ink. Avery Collins DeLuca. She read it twice. Beneath it were the contract, the trust documents, the security agreement, and a fabricated history of their relationship. According to the document, Avery and Roman had met 6 months earlier at a Marine charity dinner. She looked up. "I spilled champagne on your shoes. It makes me appear approachable. You threatened a priest with paperwork yesterday. I did not threaten him. You made the distinction difficult to observe." Roman's mouth shifted slightly. Avery returned to the contract. She read every page. Then she pulled a pen from the folder. "You used the phrase reasonable discretion 4 times. It is standard language. It is language powerful people use when they want permission to redefine the rules." Roman leaned back. "What do you suggest Avery rewrote the first clause?" For the next 40 minutes, they revised the agreement together. Roman did not interrupt while she read. He did not explain obvious concepts or attempt to rush her. When they finished, Avery placed the pen down. "My parents. You can call them from the garden room. I do not need permission." "No, you need privacy." A phone rested beside the folder. 43 missed calls appeared on the screen. 20 came from Ellen, 9 from Thomas, 7 from Grant, 5 from Lila. Avery looked at Lila's name until it blurred. Roman noticed. "You do not have to answer her." "I know." Avery carried the phone into the glass garden room. Ellen answered before the first ring ended. "Avery, I am here." Her mother began crying. Avery closed her eyes. "Did he force you?" Ellen asked. "No. Are you safe? I think so. That is not an answer. It is the only honest one I have." Ellen breathed unevenly. "Do you love him?" "No." "Does he love you?" "No." The silence stretched. Avery looked through the glass. Roman stood in the kitchen speaking with a man she recognized from the cathedral. For the first time in years, Avery said, "No one is pretending." When she returned, Roman had opened a news page on the laptop. A video from the cathedral had already spread across social media. Headlines filled the screen. "New Orleans bride marries. Alleged crime boss. Minutes after exposing fiancé. Grant Whitmore claims former bride was manipulated. Questions surround DeLuca wedding." Avery read Grant's statement. He described her as exhausted, emotionally unstable, and vulnerable to Roman's influence. The words were familiar. Grant had used softer versions of them whenever she challenged him. Roman closed the page. "My communications team will issue a response." "No." He looked at her. "This is my reputation. It affects mine. You already have one." Roman waited. Avery opened the camera on her phone. She positioned it against the coffee pot and pressed record. "My name is Avery Collins DeLuca. I was not taken from my wedding. I ended one relationship after discovering betrayal and entered another legal arrangement by choice. Grant Whitmore is welcome to explain his financial conduct to the proper authorities. He is no longer qualified to explain mine." She stopped the recording. Roman watched her. "You did not defend me. You did not need defending. And you did." Avery picked up her coffee. "I needed ownership of my own story." A message appeared on Roman's phone. He read it once. "My grandfather has invited us to dinner." "When? Tonight?" Avery looked toward the rain clearing over the lake. "And your uncle? He will be there. What does he want to prove you are either a victim or an opportunist?" Avery closed the contract folder. Which answer frightens him more? Roman's gaze settled on her. "The possibility that you are neither." Roman's answer followed Avery upstairs. Elena was waiting in the dressing room beside 3 gowns arranged across a velvet bench. One was black, one silver and one a deep shade of green that reminded Avery of cypress leaves after rain. Avery touched the green fabric. "How formal is dinner?" Elena considered the question. "Mister, Salvatore believes every meal should look important enough to become someone's final memory." That sounds comforting. It was not intended to be. Avery chose the green dress. It had a high neckline, long sleeves, and a narrow waist. The fabric moved easily when she walked. It did not squeeze her ribs or force her shoulders backward. For the first time in 2 days, she put on clothing that felt like it belonged to her body. Elena opened a jewelry case. Inside was a diamond necklace large enough to purchase the apartment Avery had shared with Grant. Avery stared at it. "No. Mr. DeLuca requested that you have options. That is not an option. That is a declaration of war." Elena's mouth moved slightly. Avery could not tell whether the woman had almost smiled. Roman appeared in the doorway wearing a black suit with a dark gray tie. His gaze moved over Avery, once controlled but attentive. Elena lifted the necklace. Roman looked at Avery. "You do not want it." "I do not want to look purchased." He entered the room and took the necklace from Elena. "What do you want to look like?" Avery met his eyes in the mirror. "Like I know why I am in the room." Roman placed the diamonds back inside the case. Then he handed her a thin black folder. Avery opened it. The first page contained a photograph of Salvatore DeLuca. The second showed Vincent. Behind them were names, businesses, family connections, charitable foundations, and summaries of every guest expected at dinner. Avery looked up. "You prepared a briefing file. You asked for information that could place you in danger. This is more information than most men give their wives in 10 years. Most men do not have my family." Avery turned another page. A photograph showed Vincent shaking hands with the mayor beside a hospital construction site. The caption identified him as chairman of the DeLuca Hope Foundation. "He looks respectable," Avery said. "He has spent 20 years paying photographers to prove it." "What does he control?" "Several construction companies, 2 private clubs, a hospital foundation, enough judges to misunderstand obvious evidence. And he wants your position. He believes it was his before I was born." Avery closed the folder. "Does he know you suspect him?" "He knows I suspect everyone." "That is not what I asked." Roman adjusted one cuff. "No." Avery held the folder against her chest. "Then tonight I know nothing." Roman looked at her for a long moment. "You understand this world quickly. I understand men who hide liabilities behind polished presentations. That sounds personal. It usually is." The drive to Salvatore's estate took less than 30 minutes. The rain had ended, leaving the streets dark and reflective beneath the evening lights. New Orleans moved around them in fragments. Music drifted from an open restaurant. A streetcar passed with glowing windows. Couples walked beneath balconies still dripping with rain. Avery sat beside Roman in the rear of the vehicle and reviewed the folder. Salvatore had built the family's legitimate shipping empire from a collection of warehouses and repair yards. Vincent had managed construction and political relationships. Roman controlled port security cargo protection and the private intelligence network that kept the family businesses alive. Roman's older brother Michael had once been expected to inherit everything. The file did not explain why he had not. Avery closed it before asking. Salvatore's home stood beside Lake Pontchartrain behind stone walls, older than the surrounding neighborhood. Unlike Roman's severe glass estate, the DeLuca mansion looked rooted in another century. White columns rose above a broad entrance. Live oaks covered the drive, their branches heavy with Spanish moss. Warm light filled tall windows. Men waited near the front steps. Their jackets were tailored well enough to hide the weapons beneath them. Roman offered Avery his hand as she stepped from the vehicle. She accepted it. His palm was warm. Do they expect us to touch? She asked quietly. They expect us to perform. Avery looked at the lit windows. Then let us avoid bad reviews. Roman's thumb moved once against her fingers. It was the smallest response, but she felt it. The doors opened before they reached them. Vincent DeLuca stood beneath the chandelier. He was in his early 60s, silver-haired and elegantly dressed. His smile was warm enough to appear sincere from across a room. Up close, Avery saw that it never reached his eyes. Roman. Vincent embraced his nephew with one arm. Roman did not return the gesture. Vincent turned toward Avery. And this must be the famous bride. He took her hand and lowered his mouth toward it. Avery withdrew before his lips touched her skin. His smile remained in place. You must be exhausted, he said. Yesterday you were almost Mrs. Whitmore. Today you belong to the DeLucas. I do not belong to families, Mr. DeLuca. Avery placed her hand through Roman's arm. I married one man. Something sharpened behind Vincent's smile. Roman guided her inside. The entrance hall smelled of polished wood candles and the faint smoke of a fireplace burning somewhere beyond the staircase. Family portraits covered the walls. Men with Roman's dark eyes stared down from gilded frames beside women wearing pearls and expressions of quiet endurance. At the end of the hall stood Salvatore DeLuca. He was smaller than Avery expected. Age had reduced his body, but not his presence. He leaned on a black cane. His white hair had been combed straight back, revealing a face cut with deep lines. His eyes moved first to Roman, then to Avery. Roman stopped before him. Grandfather? Salvatore ignored the greeting. He looked at Avery's dress, her plain platinum ring, and the absence of diamonds around her throat. You refused the family jewels. Avery glanced at Roman. News traveled quickly inside the house. I refused a necklace. In this family, they are often the same thing. Salvatore held out his hand. Avery took it. His grip was dry and surprisingly strong. You caused considerable excitement yesterday. I had help. Salvatore looked toward Roman. My grandson has always had poor timing. Roman said nothing. Salvatore released Avery. Come. Dinner is already becoming cold, and cold food encourages unnecessary honesty. The dining room contained a table long enough for 20 people, though only 9 places had been set. Vincent sat across from Roman. Salvatore took the head. Avery recognized several faces from the folder. Vincent's son, Anthony, a family attorney, the director of a DeLuca shipping company. 2 older cousins who watched Roman with the careful respect men gave a loaded weapon. The first course arrived. No one mentioned the wedding until the soup had been served. Salvatore lifted his spoon. Why did you marry my grandson? Every movement at the table stopped. Avery looked at Roman. He gave no signal. This was her question. She placed her spoon beside the bowl. Because the man I intended to marry showed me that safety can be fabricated. Salvatore waited. Roman offered terms instead of promises. Vincent smiled. How romantic. It was not. Avery looked at him. That was part of the appeal. One of the cousins lowered his eyes to hide a reaction. Salvatore studied her. Do you trust Roman? Roman's hand remained still beside his glass. Not completely, Avery said. The silence deepened. Vincent leaned back. Salvatore's eyes brightened. Avery continued. But he has not asked me to ignore what he is. That gives him an advantage over most men I have trusted. Salvatore laughed. The sound was rough and brief, but genuine. Roman looked at Avery. There was no amusement in his face. There was attention. The next course arrived. Vincent spoke while a server poured wine. I understand you were once an accountant, forensic accounting, but you left. Yes. To help Mr. Whitmore sell houses, to keep his company from failing. Vincent lifted his glass. a difficult distinction to prove after the fact. Avery looked at him. Only if the records are poorly maintained. And were they Grant believed receipts were a form of personal criticism? Anthony laughed before Vincent looked at him. The sound ended immediately. Vincent returned his attention to Avery. You gave up a successful career for a man worked without formal ownership and then married another powerful man within an hour of discovering betrayal. He smiled gently. Some might see a pattern. Avery folded her hands in her lap. What pattern would that be? A tendency to attach yourself to ambition. Roman's gaze cooled. Avery spoke before he could. You reviewed my employment history. Public curiosity. Then you know I investigated marine insurance fraud. I know what your resume claims. Avery looked toward the shipping director seated beside Vincent. Do you insure the Lafitte terminal through Crescent Gulf Mutual? The man blinked. Yes. And the private cargo yards through Bayline Risk? Yes. Vincent's smile weakened. Avery continued. Grant's stolen transfers passed through 3 consulting companies. Each company used the same insurance broker. No one moved. That broker is listed as a paid advisor to the DeLuca Hope Foundation. The shipping director looked at Vincent. Vincent placed his wineglass down. You have been married for 1 day, and Roman has already placed family documents in front of you. Roman showed me a photograph and several corporate names. Avery looked directly at Vincent. The connection came from public filings. That is convenient. It is accounting. Vincent's voice remained soft. You are making a serious implication. No, I am describing a pattern. And what do you believe it means? I have not seen enough evidence to believe anything. Avery lifted her glass. But you responded faster than a man hearing the information for the first time. The room went silent. Vincent's expression did not change. Only his fingers tightened around the stem of his glass. Roman leaned back in his chair. Avery felt his gaze on her, but she did not look away from Vincent. Salvatore cut into his dinner. The fish is becoming cold. Conversation resumed slowly. No one mentioned the broker again. The rest of the meal moved through safer subjects. Port expansion, a hospital opening, a city council race. Avery listened. Vincent rarely made direct statements. He guided other people toward conclusions and watched them repeat his ideas as if they were their own. Roman spoke only when necessary. Salvatore observed everyone. When dessert arrived, Vincent smiled at Avery again. Roman has never appreciated domestic influence. Avery took a small bite of cake. What kind of influence? The kind a wife eventually exercises. Roman's expression darkened. Vincent continued. Every marriage contains control. The only question is who admits it. Avery placed her fork down. That belief may explain why no woman stayed married to you. Anthony coughed into his napkin. One of the cousins stared at his plate. Vincent's smile disappeared for the first time. Salvatore raised his wineglass to hide his mouth. Roman did not hide anything. The satisfaction in his eyes was brief but unmistakable. After dinner, Salvatore asked Avery to join him in the library. Roman started to follow. Salvatore tapped his cane against the floor. Not you. Roman looked at Avery. She nodded once. The library occupied the rear corner of the house. Shelves reached the ceiling. The room smelled of leather dust and wood smoke. A portrait of a dark-haired woman hung above the fireplace. She wore no jewels. Her eyes looked remarkably like Roman's. My wife, Salvatore, said. Celia. Avery remembered the name from Roman's file. She died before Roman was born, when he was 7. Avery looked at him. The file said his mother died when he was 7. Salvatore lowered himself into a chair. Celia was his grandmother. Isabella was his mother. Both women died too young. This family is efficient at preserving businesses and careless with people. Avery sat opposite him. Why did you require Roman to marry Salvatore? Rested both hands over the head of his cane. I did not require a wedding. I required evidence. Of what? That he understands power is not the same as survival. Avery looked toward the portrait. What does a wife prove? Nothing by herself. Salvatore's gaze sharpened. A weak man uses a wife as decoration. A cruel man uses her as evidence that someone tolerates him. A wise man understands she remembers what he finds convenient to forget. And what did Celia remember for you? The names of men I harmed while building this family? His answer came without hesitation. She remembered promises I made when I became too successful to respect them. She remembered that fear works quickly and loyalty works longer. Avery studied him. Roman did not marry me because he wanted someone to remember him. No. He married me because you created a deadline. Yes. Then why approve it? Salvatore smiled faintly. I have not. Avery sat back. What do you want from me? The truth. About Roman. About yourself. Salvatore pointed his cane toward the ring on her hand. What do you intend to take from this marriage? Avery looked down at the platinum band. My career. Roman can purchase one. Then it would not be mine. Salvatore waited. My name cleared. Avery continued. Control of my own money. Enough power that no one can decide my life while calling it protection. Salvatore nodded. Good. Good. A woman who wants nothing becomes dependent on whatever she is given. His expression hardened. Vincent will come for you, because he believes I found something. Because Roman listened when you spoke. Avery thought of the dining table. That makes me dangerous. It makes you useful. Salvatore looked toward the closed door. Men like Vincent do not fear wives. They fear witnesses who cannot be purchased. Avery rose. Do you believe Roman can defeat him? Salvatore's eyes moved to Celia's portrait. Roman has spent 15 years learning how. Why 15? Salvatore did not answer immediately. Then he said, Ask your husband about his brother. Roman waited in the entrance hall. They left without saying goodbye to Vincent. Inside the vehicle, silence traveled with them for several blocks. Avery looked out at the dark lake. Your grandfather told me to ask about Michael. Roman's face became unreadable. What did he say? That you spent 15 years preparing to defeat Vincent? Roman watched the road through the windshield. My brother was expected to inherit the family companies. What happened? His vehicle exploded outside a warehouse. Avery turned toward him. An accident. Number Vincent. I could not prove it. Roman's voice remained calm, but his hand had closed into a fist beside his leg. Michael had discovered that Vincent was using construction contracts to move money through the port. He planned to confront him at a family meeting, and the night before the meeting, he died. Yes. How old were you, 21? Avery looked at him. For the first time, Roman's control did not seem like coldness. It looked constructed, a wall built after fire. You suspected Vincent was connected to Grant, she said. I suspected Grant was too incompetent to design the theft alone. You did not tell me. I had no proof. That is not the same as having nothing. Roman turned toward her. No. Avery waited. I should have told you, he said. The admission was quiet. She looked back toward the city. Do not make me discover the danger after everyone else has discussed it. I will not. It was not an apology designed to end the conversation. It was a promise stated like an operational rule. Avery believed he intended to keep it. Roman's phone vibrated. Gabriel's voice came through the vehicle speakers. "Whitmore's accounts are frozen. His vehicle was repossessed 20 minutes ago. The licensing board opened an investigation after receiving the vendor records." "And the apartment?" Roman asked. "Search team found 2 empty drives and a locked safe. The port ledger is not there." Avery leaned forward. "What about his business files?" Secured, Gabriel said. "Most were prepared by someone competent." Roman looked at her. Avery ignored the acknowledgement. "Where is Grant?" "He appeared outside your parents' house." Her body went still. Roman's expression changed. "Is he inside?" "No." "Mr. Collins met him on the porch." Avery closed her eyes. "What happened?" Gabriel paused. "Whitmore said Roman would destroy you. Your father told him he had accomplished that before Roman entered the cathedral." Avery released a breath. "Is my family safe?" 2 men are watching the house from across the street." Roman looked at her. Avery nodded. This time he had acted before asking. This time she understood why. They reached Roman's estate shortly before midnight. Avery's phone showed 5 missed calls from Lila. She stared at the name. Roman removed his coat. "You do not have to answer. I know." The phone vibrated again. "Lila." Avery watched it ring, then stop. A voicemail notification appeared. She pressed play. For several seconds there was only breathing. Then Lila spoke. "Avery, I know you hate me." Her voice was low and unsteady. "You should. I am not asking you to forgive me." Avery gripped the phone. Grant did not only take money, he took a port access ledger. "I copied part of it because I thought I could use it to make him leave me alone." A sound moved behind Lila. "A car engine. I think someone knows. A black sedan has been outside my apartment for 2 nights. Grant told me I was imagining it, but he was scared." Lila inhaled sharply. "If anything happens, look at the songs from freshman year. You will understand." A car door opened. Lila whispered, "Someone is here." The message ended. Avery called back immediately. No answer. Again. Voicemail. Roman was already speaking to Gabriel. "Trace the phone." Avery looked at him. "She said songs from freshman year. What does that mean? I do not know yet." Gabriel entered the room less than 10 minutes later with a tablet. The phone last connected near a parking garage in the French Quarter. Signal disappeared 7 minutes after the voicemail. "Cameras?" Roman asked. "Being collected." Avery played the message again. Lila's fear sounded real. That did not erase the betrayal. It made it more complicated. Avery lowered the phone. "She went to my parents' house this morning." Gabriel looked up. "She stayed outside for 6 minutes, then left." "Did she speak to them?" "No." Avery thought of Lila sitting in a car, perhaps trying to decide whether confession was worth the cost. Roman's security alarm sounded once, not loud, a controlled tone from the wall panel. Gabriel touched his earpiece. His face changed. What a package was left inside the private delivery entrance. Roman became still. "Inside, yes. That entrance is locked." Gabriel looked toward the hall. It was opened with a valid code. 4 security men entered carrying a white box. They placed it on the table. Roman opened it. Lila's phone lay inside. Beside it was a photograph of Avery leaving Salvatore's house less than 2 hours earlier. Words had been written across the back. "A borrowed wife is still a weakness." Avery read the sentence twice. "Is Lila dead?" Roman examined the phone without touching it. "If they wanted us to believe she was dead, they would have sent blood. That is not comforting. It was not meant to be." Gabriel looked toward the security corridor. "Only 6 people know that entrance exists." Roman's gaze moved across the men in the room. Lock the estate. Steel mechanisms engaged somewhere inside the walls, doors sealed, lights changed from warm white to a muted red along the lower corridors. Avery picked up Lila's voicemail phone. Roman turned to her. You are going upstairs. No. Avery. No. This is no longer an accounting problem. She placed Lila's phone beside the photograph. No. Her eyes moved from the valid access code to the delivery entrance, then to the list of 6 people Gabriel had opened on the tablet. It is a pattern. Avery looked at Roman. And patterns are what I do. Roman held Avery's gaze for a long moment. The red security lights sharpened the angles of his face. Around them, men moved through the house with controlled urgency. Doors were checked. Weapons were drawn. Every employee was separated and taken to a different room. Gabriel placed the access report on the table. The code belonged to Daniel Russo, he said. Night security supervisor. Roman looked toward the eastern corridor. Where is he missing? When was he last seen 40 minutes ago? Avery studied the report. Daniel's code had opened the delivery entrance at 10:47. The security camera beside that door had stopped recording at 10:45 and restarted 4 minutes later. She turned to Gabriel. What else lost power at 10:45? Nothing. Then it was not a power failure. We know. No. You know someone disabled a camera. Avery pointed to the report. I want to know what the system thinks happened. Gabriel opened another screen. The camera log showed a scheduled maintenance command. Avery read the authorization name. Who is Melissa Crane? Roman answered. Vincent's former technology consultant. She supposedly left Louisiana 8 months ago. Avery looked at the timestamp again. Someone used Daniel's physical code and Melissa's digital authorization. They wanted you to find both names. Gabriel frowned. You think Daniel was framed? I think a man who intended to remain hidden would not leave a perfect trail to 2 known people. Roman moved closer. What are they directing us away from? Avery picked up Lila's phone. The phone. Gabriel had already placed it inside a signal-blocking sleeve. Avery looked at him. Did anyone turn it on? No. Did anyone scan it, basic explosive and chemical screening only? Then they did not send it to communicate. They sent it because they wanted it inside the house. Roman's expression changed. Tracker, possibly? Gabriel carried the phone into a reinforced security room. A technical specialist opened the casing. A thin transmitter had been placed beneath the battery. It had sent one signal before the phone entered the blocking sleeve. The location of Roman's estate was already known, but the transmitter had provided something more precise. It had identified the room where Roman received private deliveries. Avery watched the device beneath the examination light. They are mapping the house. Roman looked at Gabriel. Move everyone from the eastern wing. Change every access code. Assume the security plans are compromised. Gabriel left to issue the orders. Roman turned to Avery. You are still going upstairs. She looked at him. You heard the message. Lila left me a clue. My men will examine it. They do not know what it means. They can learn. They do not have time. Roman stepped closer. Vincent wants you involved. The photograph proves it. Then leaving me uninformed gives him exactly what he wants. It keeps you alive. Avery's voice remained steady. It keeps me dependent. Something tightened in Roman's face. That is not the same thing. It becomes the same thing when you decide what I am allowed to know. The room fell silent around them. Roman glanced toward the men standing near the doors. Leave us. They obeyed. When the last man disappeared, Roman lowered his voice. I promised to protect you. You also promised not to turn protection into a cage. Vincent is not Grant. He will not insult you and wait for forgiveness. He will kill you to prove I can be controlled. Avery moved closer until only the table separated them. Then stop treating me like the only person in this marriage who can be lost. Roman said nothing. Avery saw the words reach him, not as an argument, as a fear he had refused to name. She picked up a notepad and wrote Lila's final sentence. Look at the songs from freshman year. Lila and I lived in the same dorm, Avery said. We shared playlists because the walls were thin, and neither of us owned headphones that worked. Roman remained across from her. What songs? Old soul music, blues, songs our parents played. Do you remember the list? Not all of it. Avery opened the recovered phone through a secure computer. The music application contained hundreds of tracks. She sorted them by date. A playlist titled Freshman Damage appeared near the bottom. 20 songs. Avery read the titles. Nothing formed a clear message. She selected the first word of each title. Still nothing. Then she remembered Lila writing notes during lectures. She had always circled the third word in every heading because 3 was her lucky number. Avery took the third word from each song title. Sugar, house, river, Saint, James. Roman leaned over the table. St. James, Sugar House. Gabriel returned. There is an abandoned sugar warehouse near the river. Closed after a fire 12 years ago. Owned by whom, Avery asked. Gabriel searched. A holding company registered in Mississippi. Roman already knew. Vincent. The warehouse sat beside an unused section of the Mississippi River beyond a line of rusted freight tracks and empty processing buildings. Roman prepared 12 men. Avery stood beside the equipment table while Gabriel distributed weapons and communication devices. Roman approached her. You remain in the command vehicle. I can work with that. You do not leave it. If the situation remains what we expect. His eyes narrowed. That was not agreement. It was the most honest answer available. Gabriel handed Avery a tablet linked to the warehouse camera's port records and the team's body feeds. Roman checked the protective vest beneath her coat. His fingers stopped before touching the straps. May I? Avery nodded. He tightened the vest at her side. The movement was practical, but his hands remained close enough for her to feel their warmth. If anything changes, Roman said, you leave with the driver. If anything changes, I tell you before your men walk into a trap. His gaze stayed on hers. Then he stepped back. The convoy reached the warehouse shortly before 2 a.m. Fog moved across the river. The water struck the pilings with a slow, hollow rhythm. Broken windows covered the upper floors of the sugar house. From the command vehicle, Avery watched 6 armed guards move near the main entrance. Their positions were visible. Too visible. Roman's team approached from the south. Avery studied the building plans. The original warehouse had 3 processing areas, but the power records showed electricity being supplied to a 4th structure listed as abandoned cold storage. She examined the thermal feed. The main building contained 7 heat signatures. The smaller structure behind it contained 4. One of them remained seated. Roman Avery said through the communication line, I hear you. The front guards are a distraction. There is a 2nd building behind the loading yard. Gabriel changed the camera angle. The smaller structure was hidden beneath a collapsed roof extension. Roman redirected half the team. Avery continued reviewing the cameras. A man appeared on the 2nd floor of the main warehouse. Grant. His shirt was stained. His hair was uncombed. He carried no weapon. Roman saw him through the feed. Whitmore is inside. Grant looked directly at one of the cameras. Then a speaker inside the command vehicle activated. Avery. His voice came through the warehouse system. Avery froze. Grant smiled weakly at the camera. I know you are listening. Roman spoke into her earpiece. Do not answer. Grant looked over his shoulder. They have Lila. They are going to kill her. Avery pressed the microphone. Where is she? Roman turned toward the command vehicle from across the yard. Grant's face filled the screen. I knew you would come. You left a message through her phone. I did not send the phone. Then who did? Grant looked toward someone beyond the camera. His fear was immediate. Avery understood. Vincent was nearby. Grant, she said, why did you steal the port ledger? I needed leverage. For what? To get out. Out of what Grant's breathing became uneven. Vincent financed the riverfront project. When the permits failed, he offered to erase the debt if I moved money through the vendor accounts. Roman signaled for his team to continue moving. Avery kept Grant talking. And the ledger. He wanted the inspection schedules. You knew what he was shipping. No. Grant. I knew enough. His voice cracked. I thought I could copy the files and keep part of them. I thought if I had evidence, he could not touch me. Avery looked at the recording indicator. Every word was being saved. You planned to use my credentials when the accounts were audited. Grant closed his eyes. You would have fixed it. The answer hurt less than it should have. Maybe because it was finally honest. You were supposed to help me, he said. That is what you always did. Avery looked at the man on the screen. I spent 3 years fixing you. All it did was teach you to break bigger things. A shadow moved behind Grant. The camera went dark. Gunfire sounded from the warehouse. Roman's men entered through the side loading area. Avery watched the body feeds shift through smoke metal corridors and broken machinery. Gabriel's team reached the cold storage building. Inside, Lila was tied to a chair. Blood covered one side of her face, but she was alive. Avery exhaled. Then the command vehicle door opened. The driver turned too late. Daniel Russo struck him from behind and dragged Avery from the seat. She hit the gravel hard. The tablet remained in her hand. Daniel pressed a gun against her back. Walk! Avery moved toward the warehouse. Through the communication device, she heard Roman calling her name. Daniel took her through a side entrance and into the processing room. Vincent stood beneath an iron staircase. Grant knelt nearby with his hands tied. Several armed men surrounded them. Vincent smiled when he saw Avery. There she is. Daniel forced her forward. Roman appeared on the opposite platform with Gabriel beside him. His weapon was aimed at Vincent. Vincent placed his gun against Avery's neck. Roman stopped. I wondered how long it would take, Vincent said. The great Roman DeLuca finally found something he could not sacrifice. Avery felt the cold metal beneath her jaw. Roman's face showed nothing. Only his eyes betrayed him. Vincent saw it too. That is the weakness Salvatore wanted you to discover. Roman lowered his weapon slightly. Vincent smiled. Avery looked at the tablet still held against her side. The warehouse plans remained open. The building's emergency controls were connected to the old fire suppression system. She moved her thumb across the screen. Vincent continued speaking. You married a stranger to inherit an empire, and now you are going to surrender it to keep her breathing. Roman lowered the weapon to the floor. Avery found the control. She pressed it. Steel fire doors dropped between the processing sections. The warehouse erupted with sound. Vincent's men were divided by heavy metal barriers. Sprinklers burst overhead. Emergency lights flashed white across the room. Daniel's grip loosened. Avery drove her elbow into his ribs and dropped to the floor. Roman crossed the distance before Daniel recovered. One strike sent the gun away. Gabriel's men entered through the separated sections. The gunfire ended quickly. Roman reached Avery. His hands stopped inches from her face. Are you hurt? No. Only then did he touch her. He placed both hands around her shoulders and drew her against him. The embrace lasted one breath. Then Roman turned toward Vincent. Vincent had fallen near the staircase. Blood moved from a wound in his leg. Roman picked up his weapon. Vincent laughed through clenched teeth. Do it. Roman aimed at his chest. Avery stood. No. Roman looked at her. He wants you to kill him, she said. Then every associate he bought calls him a victim of your ambition." Vincent's smile weakened. Avery held up the tablet. Grant's confession was transmitted to Salvatore's attorney, federal investigators, and 3 reporters before I entered this room. Roman looked at Vincent. The gun remained steady. Avery continued. "Killing him gives him silence. Exposure takes everything he values." Roman lowered the weapon. Vincent stared at Avery with open hatred. "You think this family will ever accept you?" Avery looked at the armed men, the ruined warehouse, and Roman standing beside her. "I stopped needing acceptance from dangerous men before I entered the cathedral." Federal vehicles reached the warehouse before sunrise. Lila was carried outside on a stretcher. Avery walked beside her. Lila opened one swollen eye. "I am sorry." Avery's chest tightened. "I know. I believed him." "So did I." Lila began crying. Avery took her hand. "This does not repair what you did. I know, but I am not leaving you here." Lila closed her fingers weakly around Avery's. Grant was taken away in handcuffs. He looked at Avery as officers placed him inside a vehicle. She felt no victory, only distance. By noon, Vincent's financial network had begun collapsing. The port ledger identified corrupt inspectors, political contacts, false shipping companies, and years of hidden transactions. Salvatore called the family vote from his hospital room. Roman arrived late with Avery beside him. Vincent's chair remained empty. Salvatore signed control of the legitimate DeLuca companies over to Roman. "You abandoned the vote," Salvatore said. "Yes, for her." Roman looked at Avery. "Yes." Salvatore signed the final page. A man who cannot recognize what must be protected should never inherit anything. 3 months later, Avery opened Collins Maritime Investigations in an office overlooking the river. Her first client was DeLuca Maritime Security. Roman sat across from her desk while she placed the service agreement before him. He read the fee. Then he signed. Avery raised an eyebrow. "You did not negotiate." "I enjoy surviving." She smiled. That evening, Roman gave her another document. Termination of the marriage contract. The trust remained hers. The security protection remained active. She could leave without penalty. Avery read it. "You are letting me go. I am removing the obligation." Roman placed his wedding ring on the table. "What happens after that must be your choice." Avery looked at the man who had first offered her a contract beneath stained glass and whispers. She tore the termination document in half. Roman became completely still. Avery picked up his ring and slid it back onto his finger. "I am not staying because you paid me." His voice lowered. "Why are you staying?" "Because when I told you where the line was, you stopped. When I told you the truth, you listened. When you had to choose between power and a person, you chose the person." Roman lifted his hand toward her cheek. He waited. Avery leaned into his palm. "This is not a 1-year agreement," he said. "No, there is no payment if you leave. I have my own money." For the first time, Roman smiled without restraint. Several months later, they returned to St. Gabriel's Cathedral. There were no reporters. No armed guards stood in the aisle. No white roses concealed betrayal. Thomas and Ellen sat in the first pew. Father Brennan looked at Avery. "Are you ready?" Roman leaned closer. "You can still walk away." Avery looked at the altar where silence had once been expected of her. The first time she stood there, she had belonged to everyone's expectations. The second time, she had used marriage as an escape. This time, she had chosen to return. Avery took Roman's hand. "I already walked away from the wrong man." She faced the priest. "Continue." The cathedral bells began to ring over New Orleans. Outside, the Mississippi moved beneath the evening light, carrying ships toward the open sea. Avery did not wait for anyone to decide where her life would go. She chose the direction herself.